Good afternoon. So welcome to Articulating Your Narrative. This session is going to talk a little bit about the NACE career competencies and how you can use those competencies to artfully talk about your experiences in an employment interview. So first thing up is probably, what is NACE? Well, NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And really, they do several surveys throughout the year that encourage communication between colleges and employers to ensure that students are adequately prepared for their next step. So NACE has identified 7 career competencies that they consider to be important, which are going to include the things on the screen, which we're going to talk about in a lot more detail. The important thing to notice about these competencies is that all of these are competencies that would be gained through experience, even if you consider your experience to be education. So it's important to note that none of these are really technical in nature. None of these are going to be things that you get from specifically about your field of study. These are all going to be transferable skills that you could get from a variety of different places. And it's really just going to be about how you talk about your experiences with those kinds of things in the interview that is going to help set you apart from other people. To artfully articulate your narrative, you're going to have to be able to pull from your experiences to illustrate that you're adept at these skills. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to be fairly specific with your experiences with these competencies, much greater than just saying things like, well, I'm really good at communication because everybody says I'm a good communicator and I'm a good communicator, or I'm good at teamwork because I'm on an athletic team and so you have to be good at teamwork. We're talking about very specific experiences that you can talk about that help show an employer that you can actually demonstrate the skills that they're talking about. And really what that takes is reflection, and it takes a little bit of advanced planning. So thinking about these things ahead of time. So essentially, this workshop is meant to kind of make you aware of what some of these competencies are and some of the experiences that you could pull that might help you talk about these things. So when we talk about what kind of specific experiences you would want to highlight, it really can be anything. So from the perspective of, it could be things that happen during your internship or on the job. It could be things that happen in classes or class projects that you might have had. Even co-curricular experiences, including music, athletics, organizational involvement. Any experience that's going to be specific to you and be meaningful is going to be something that you could talk about in the interview. So we're going to kick off starting off with one of the competencies that I think is a little less known by students, which is career and self-development. So if we talk about the specific definition as indicated by NACE, that is to proactively develop oneself and one's career through continual personal and professional learning, awareness of one's strengths and weaknesses, navigation of career opportunities, and networking to build relationships within and without one's organization. And so as you can see below that, we have a couple of the sample kinds of experiences that you might be able to talk about. These are general in nature, and I'm not going to read these out specifically every single one, but there's a couple of these that really kind of give you keys or cues on the kinds of experiences that you might be able to use. So for example, identify areas for continual growth or seek out opportunities to learn. Being able to talk very specifically in an interview about an opportunity where you took it upon yourself to learn something new, whether that something new is related to your field of study or not, is going to be really important because it shows that you have that passion to learn, that inquisitiveness that goes with that. Another bullet on here that would be important would be to establish and maintain relationships with people who can help one professionally. So if you are connecting with alumni through the Career Services Office, or you have participated in networking events, either through Morningside College or through Chamber of Commerce events, those are all very specific experiences and opportunities that you would be able to talk about from that perspective in an interview situation. And again, we would want that to be specific. I wouldn't want you to say, I go to all the networking opportunities at my college because I think it's important. We would want to say, let me tell you about a time that I went to one of these networking events and I was able to connect with this person, and this is how that moved forward. Or talking specifically about seeking out other opportunities to learn things within your either within or outside of your career area. The next competency is communication. So as per the definition, this is to clearly and effectively exchange information, ideas, facts, and perspectives with persons inside and outside of an organization. And communication is a really wide-ranging sort of value. So again, we kind of want to look at what some of these sample activities are and what those look like. A couple of the ones that I would point out as being pretty important: being able to employ active listening, persuasion, and influencing skills, asking appropriate questions for specific information, and even framing communication with respect to diversity of learning styles, varied individual communication abilities, and cultural differences. So being able to talk about times where you have had to communicate in different kinds of ways, or you've been able to utilize some of those skills. So again, maybe specifically you would talk about a time where you had to ask a question, either at a place of employment or in a group project or in a class, so that you could clarify that information. In addition, talking about times that you had to communicate with people who are different from you. So a good example I can think of from this perspective is all of our accounting students do the VITA program, which is tax returns for people from diverse environments. A lot of those people don't speak English, or they don't speak good English. So even though you don't speak a foreign language, being able to communicate effectively with people who don't speak your same language indicates something about your communication styles. The next competency is leadership. So leadership is defined as recognizing and capitalizing on personal and team strengths to achieve organizational goals. And again, we're going to have some of those sample activities below. This is another one where it's going to be important for you to be able to pull upon specific experiences. And this would be under categories where you had been established as a leader, as well as under categories where you didn't necessarily have a specific elected or selected position of power. So for example, if you were in a group project and you were kind of the informal team leader of that, you might talk about that particular experience. If you were in an elected or selected position, you would talk very specifically about that and how you were able to do those kinds of things. But again, if you have less leadership experience, I mean, this competency is really easy if you've had that formal leadership experience. If you haven't had that formal leadership experience, then you start to look at some of those characteristics under the experience section and try to think about where you might have done things like that. So for example, when could you talk about a time where you were able to inspire, persuade, or motivate yourself or others under a shared vision? That could be in a situation where you weren't actually the pre-appointed leader. That could be something where you were a participant. So just talking very specifically about those times and what you were able to do within those times. Another one that would be important under this category would be using innovative thinking to go beyond traditional methods. So talking about times where you were able to kind of like think outside of the box. And then I would also say seek out and leverage diverse resources and feedback from others to inform direction. Because really, under that category, you are also incorporating some of these other competencies like communication and critical thinking, so you can start to kind of put all of those together. The goal for articulating your narrative is that under each of these competencies, you would have at least one specific example that you would be able to talk about in an interview. But in some cases, we can use one example that encompasses a couple different competencies that shows that you have that you're multifaceted. So that's also a benefit as well. The next competency is professionalism. So that is knowing work environments differ greatly, understanding and demonstrating effective work habits, and acting in the interest of the larger community and the workplace. So again, this is one that's probably like a little less known for students. Like leadership and communication are usually things that are people are pretty well familiar with. Professionalism is a little bit different, but if you take a look at the samples under professionalism, really, again, none of these are going to specifically align with a specific field of study. And you would be able to demonstrate professionalism whether you have experience in your field or not. So a couple of things that are listed on here: being present and prepared, demonstrating dependability, being able to prioritize and complete tasks. So having a work history in general, even if that work history is not related to your field of study, does help you demonstrate professionalism. And I would encourage you to utilize those kinds of resources if you don't have experience in your field. As well as if you really don't have any kind of work history, then this is where you start to call upon maybe your academic experiences or classes that you've taken where you could demonstrate that dependability, that ability to do multiple tasks, everything like that. Again, here it's going to be really important that you are using specific examples. So saying something like, well, I have worked my whole life since I was 14 years old, and I'm always very dependable and I'm always prepared. Sounds good in theory, but again, we're looking for very specific, tangible things that the employer can hang on to. So what I might say is, um, in my current position, I'm always present, prepared. I've been very dependable. In fact, in the past 2 years of employment, I've only taken off 1 day for sick time or 2 days for sick time or something like that. Or you could say, I've never left my employer in the lurch without advance notice. Kind of just talking about that proven and demonstrated ability to be professional in all kinds of situations. The next competency is teamwork. So this means to build and maintain collaborative relationships to work effectively toward common goals while appreciating diverse viewpoints and shared responsibilities. And to me, that's the important part of this competency. Like everybody knows teamwork is working together, but you need to add in the appreciating other people's viewpoints and kind of making sure that everyone is able to collaboratively work together. So a couple of things in here that I would pull out specifically: be accountable for individual and team responsibilities and deliverables. So talking about a time that you were able to work as part of a team with the entire team being able to meet their goals and objectives. Exercising the ability to compromise and be agile, being able to talk about very specific experiences where you have been able to compromise or you've been able to kind of change direction for the betterment of the team. And then, of course, building strong, positive working relationships with your supervisor and your team members. So, talking about being able to build that strong team, having people who feel comfortable relying on you and you relying on them, and vice versa. The next competency is critical thinking. And I know here at Morningside, we talk about critical thinking a lot. And for a formal definition, we have identify and respond to needs based upon an understanding of situational context and logistical analysis of relevant information. So again, this is where we're kind of talking about being able to understand what's in front of you and how you're going to move forward from that. So if there is a problem or a situation that needs to be addressed, what is the thinking that you use behind that to kind of start to construct what that's going to look like and how you're going to be able to move forward. So a couple of the key things here: proactively anticipate needs and prioritize action steps. So being able to specifically talk about a time in which there was an issue, how you addressed it, and how you moved forward is going to be a great way to address that you would have a critical thinking competency. I would say accurately summarizing and interpreting data with an awareness of personal biases that may impact incomes. And then also multitasking well in a fast-paced environment. Something that I think is important to note here is not only when we're using these examples, do we want to use examples that are certainly positive, that show that you are able to demonstrate these kinds of abilities, but in some cases, it's also helpful for you to talk about things that you've done in the past that didn't meet that criteria, so that you then can say, well, this is an example of a time where I didn't proactively anticipate needs and prioritize action steps, and this is what happened, and this is what I was able to learn from that. So very specifically addressing that with like weakness questions or challenge questions is going to be helpful as well. So if you can't think of a good example of a positive way in which you were able to demonstrate this competency, then I would think about times where you didn't utilize it the best and kind of how you were able to move forward from that. Technology, the terminology here is to understand and leverage technologies ethically to enhance efficiencies, complete tasks, and accomplish goals. Again, a couple of the key things here are going to be to quickly adapt to new or unfamiliar technologies, to use technology to improve efficiency and the productivity of your work, and then also to manipulate information, construct ideas, and use technology to achieve strategic goals. So talking very specifically about ways in which you have been able to use technology in order to streamline your work or increase your productivity. And again, specific examples is going to be important here. Now, what's less important here is the kind of technology that you have used. Technology is one of those things that's kind of universal. So if you are able to say, I have really strong technology skills within this software, generally that means that you would be able to learn how to do other kinds of software given the time and the training to do so. And so it becomes less important to say, well, I'm really, really good at this particular software. And it's more important to say that you have that ability to learn different kinds of software, because lots of companies have their own software that's not readily available for everyone to try before you would be an employee at that particular place. And then we have equity and inclusion. So the definition here is to demonstrate the awareness, the attitude, knowledge, and skills required to equitably engage and include people from different local and global cultures. So this is where you're really demonstrating that you are open-minded and you have very flexible and adaptable ideas to be able to interact with people who are different from you. So keeping an open mind to diverse ideas and new ways of thinking, demonstrating flexibility by adapting to diverse environments, and also kind of seeking out those global cross-cultural interactions and experiences that enhance one's understanding of people from different demographic groups. That would lead you to personal growth. So here you could talk very specifically about if you had done a May term or if you had done some sort of like immersion experience where you had lived overseas for a semester abroad or for a summer kind of opportunity. If you don't have those kinds of experiences, then you have to start thinking about what are some situations in which you have been able to interact with people who think differently from you. And I would say if you're having problems coming up with those experiences, that means that you need to have more of those experiences. So start thinking about ways that you could interact with campus in a number of different ways. There are tons of community programs that you can attend. We have the diversity inclusion group here on campus that's been doing events to kind of help you strive within those particular kinds of areas. Those are the competencies. The thing about the NACE career competencies is that they're really very different based on individual kinds of experiences and needs. So we would recommend that you would think really thoughtfully about, how has your experiences been shaped with these competencies, going down the line for each particular one. What are the experiences that make the most sense for me to talk about within those competencies? And then start to build your narrative from there. I would recommend that anytime you go into an interview situation, that you have like a little notebook, just something similar to this, where you have jotted down some of the experiences that you want to make sure that you get across to the employer, as well as any questions that you have. And that just kind of serves to help keep you on track. So unfortunately, when employers ask us questions, they don't necessarily always ask them in the specific way in which we have prepared. So having some of those notes jotted down kind of helps you retain the experiences that you want to talk about, but give you the flexibility to talk about those in a variety of different ways. Career Services does offer the opportunity for students to do mock interviews. We can do those both virtually, phone interviews. We can also do in-person interviews. So if this is something that you want to continue to hone your skills with, we would encourage you to reach out. We can also set up interview experiences for you to have with community members or people who are more proficient in your field of study. So just kind of keep those things in front of mind as you move throughout your time here. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to us via email or social media, and we would be happy to answer any of those questions. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.